My name is Scott Carter. I'm the Executive Vice President with SABR, and welcome to our SABR Scholar Sessions, a free quarterly event for our student and young professional members where we talk about career development, skill acquisition, give you a chance to network and meet some folks within the SABR universe that we think that you'll find interesting and helpful in your career path. So tonight we're thrilled to welcome our host for the series, Tyrone Brooks, who is the Senior Director Front Office and Field Staff Diversity Pipeline Program at Major League Baseball. Hello, Tyrone.
Hey, Scott. Glad to be here.
Joining us from the Valley of the Sun. Welcome. And then tonight's guests, we're incredibly fortunate and lucky to have from the Minnesota Twins front office, Josh Kalk, the Vice President and Assistant General Manager of the Twins, and Josh Ruffin, the Director of Applied Analytics. Hello to you both. Thank you so much for being here. It's been a while since we saw you in at SABR 53 for our SABR 52 for our national convention in Twin Cities. So we appreciate you guys being here. I will say this, I know we are competing with Game 7 of the ALCS. Obviously, we're all tremendous baseball fans, so we're going to try to give you all some time back at the end of this program so we can get some viewing in. But feel free to drop some game updates in the chat so our hosts and myself and Jessica from our staff know what's going on during the game while they're talking. So I'm going to turn it over to Tyrone, and then I'll be back with you guys for some Q&A once they get wrapped up. So thanks very much. Take it away, Ty.
Thank you so much, Scott. Good to be here. Tyrone Brooks again. Really excited to have two individuals that have done a tremendous amount with the Minnesota Twins, and each of you have your own respective journey. So I want to make sure that this group has an idea, kind of how you both have navigated to get to where you are today. And the great thing about our game is everyone has a story, and that story may be different. Each of you that are listening and here, we know each of you has a story as well that you have an opportunity one day to tell when you get in front of individuals. And also, this is a very crucial time and a critical part of the year within baseball. It's a big time for hiring. That process is getting started. And we'll also give opportunity for the Twins staff here, Josh and Josh, both to get a chance to talk a little further about what that looks like for them as an organization as well. But just to start out with, Josh Kalk, Josh Ruffin, thank you both again for being a part of this. If you could talk, we'll start with you, Josh K. First, just talking about how you broke into this industry and kind of what's been your pathway and some things you've learned along the way during the course of your time.
Fantastic. My time in baseball has been pretty long. This is my 18th year in baseball, and I started back when front offices were tiny, and none of you should follow my path because that path no longer exists. But my path was writing for what then was the largest online baseball magazine called the Hardball Times, which unfortunately went out of business when the pandemic hit. But writing for the Hardball Times and then having teams read my work, be interested in my work, and then reaching out and then hiring me. So I actually never applied to a position. They found me. But now that is not how teams operate. All of these positions are getting posted. You can find them on all of the teams' websites. And those postings are coming up, just as Tyrone said, right now. So if you are interested, you should be finding those right now. And I'll pass it either back to Tyrone or Josh to tell his entrance story.
Go ahead, Josh Ruffin. We'd love to hear your story. I know it's an interesting journey. I know they would love to hear it. I'm excited for them to get a chance to connect with you.
Well, the most important thing to know is that there were no teams actively looking for me. There were no amount of interest in the work I was doing in the same scale, but I did apply numerous times. So I think for me, I played in college and then kind of, realized that I probably wasn't going to play professionally. And so early on, I kind of had the idea of just how else can I work in baseball? And I think at the time, I graduated in 2014. So the idea of just kind of analytics being an actual career path or a field of study beyond kind of just the few elusive jobs when the front offices were really small was really just starting. And so I ended up getting my degree in statistical science. And then I did an internship working with Sports Info Solutions. And I did that for a summer before grew up and got a big boy job and stopped trying to go and work in sports. And I actually worked as a government contractor in Washington, D.C. But I kept with it. I actually ended up applying for an internship with the Detroit Tigers about a year later, and then I was up in Detroit for a year working in baseball operations, and got to learn a lot, and also learn that I was not good enough yet. And so with that, I actually bounced back to being a data analyst in DC, and then worked there for 3 years before I eventually ended up applying for an advanced analyst position with the Minnesota Twins, and that was in 2019. And I've been here since. So I've been here. This just finished my seventh season now. And it's kind of been a long, winding path, but I think the biggest key is like everybody's path into professional sports, especially baseball, is a long, winding path. So it's definitely something that I am happy to kind of speak on.
Huh. No, it's great. And obviously, again, everyone has a story, and all of you out there, uh, you're right now navigating this journey. And then one thing I try to tell individuals is understand this is really it's a marathon. It's not a sprint. So if you really look at it from that perspective, you understand, hey, there's going to be some ups and downs. It happens along the way, but you can bounce back from those things. But also, eventually, also your network that you're building is going to be something that's going to be critical for you along the way. But also, I want to get into with both Joshes, just kind of getting a sense. The Twins are one of the great organizations as far as bringing in talent. You know, you year in and year out, I see individuals that you were able to bring into the organization. And obviously, you guys do a great job in the vetting process as a whole. Can you talk a little bit about what that looks like for you as an organization? You know, this time of the year, as we're truly into the midst of the hiring season now.
Josh, why don't you go first?
All right, I will. Yeah, I think one of the biggest things right now is the idea that most people, if there is a commonality for people getting into the industry, especially within the last like 5 to 10 years, it's the idea of internships. I think most people are probably aware of that, but internships are basically the best way to get your foot in the door. I think one, obviously, it's just a natural setup of the sport. A lot of people want to get into sports, right? And so it's kind of this good way to kind of like let people get in and get a lot of exposure to things that, like, quite honestly, you can't really learn outside. Again, I had experience as a data analyst, and that helped me to kind of understand doing math, but like to understand kind of the actual parameters that you're working with in baseball, like that year in Detroit was super big for me. So this is the time of year where we're basically putting in a lot of effort to kind of go through and screen through, quite frankly, just a ton of applications, and really try and figure out like who are the most, not credentialed. I don't want to say that, but who are the most just kind of like impressive people on paper that we kind of see potential in to be able to kind of grow into these roles that are in baseball. And the reason I say it's not credentialed, it's like it's really, 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 really hard to have a lot of the skills that you need from outside of sports and outside of baseball. Again, that's why we have the internships. But a lot of the times we're looking for people who are really demonstrating a big interest in the game, who've shown that they've done some work on their own in the game, that they've kind of had like at least a targeted crafting of their skill set to get into the game. And then that's where we kind of get in there and then use our expertise to say like, hey, like we understand like you can put these parts together, and that could be somebody who can work in advance, or that's somebody who can work in projections, or that's somebody who could work in scouting, or that's somebody who could work in the different fields of baseball that we have. And so it's a lot of like trying to figure out like what your interests are, but then also trying to sit there and figure out like, hey, what's the skill set that I need to have, or what are the experiences or projects or things I can do to kind of demonstrate that can really help with kind of getting ready for this time of year as we're starting to put our postings out for fellowships.
Great. And just to add, Josh did a fantastic job of layering that on. A few extra points. As Josh noted, we're getting more than 200 applicants for every one of our positions. So don't be discouraged. As Tyrone said, there are a very, very high number of people applying, and the reality is your odds are very low to get any one position. So how can you increase your odds? The best ways of doing that are cast a wide net, not just within teams, but within the entire organization and entire MLB. You should be on all 30 teams' web pages and looking every week right now for what are the new postings that that team has put up. And is there a posting that I should be applying to? Those postings are up literally right now. So this couldn't be a better time to do that. If you go through this cycle and don't get a position, again, don't be discouraged. That happens to a large number of people, even very qualified candidates. So what are the next steps if you go through this cycle and now all of those postings are done? Then you should be turning your attention to some other areas, minor league baseball teams, third-party vendors, places like TrackMan, Hawkeye, Synergy, Inside Edge, Sports Information Solutions. Those sites, and even Tyrone and the league itself, those areas are great resume builders because all of these teams are using all of this data from these third-party vendors. And if you have experience with that data, then the team is going to know on the next round that that person can come in and will know how to use that data. So, try first with these teams because that's what's open right now. If that doesn't work, then use those third-party sources and the league itself or a minor league team, or even on the business side, use those as a little bit of a fallback for your first intern.
No, that's great. Very helpful information there. And also just kind of touching further on what Josh was talking about related to MLB in the office of the commissioner. One thing to be thinking about, we have a ton of roles that are seasonal roles for us at Major League Baseball that every year are available to you, that you can have potential access to. Just a couple of them I want to bring up for you. When it comes to our instant replay department, we have a group there every year that we hire that come in as as replay operators and also replay administrators. Most of these roles are based technically in New York for that case. And they're right there at the Instant Replay Center. They have an umpire who's actually there in the room there with them. So during the course of games, they're literally in the heart of the games as far as things happening. With in many cases with the operators, they're there. They literally have several games going on in front of them, and at that point, their job is to get the best angle. So then that umpire who's in the room can then now make a decision based upon the play and the video that they have there available to them. That's one area. The administrator role, they're helping a lot with tabulating that and using that information that's then used to be shared with the clubs, and also just for internal purposes. Hey, looking at how quickly are we coming to these calls, how things are happening at that point, being able to use that information for purposes of how can we just always try to improve things. So that's one thing just to make sure. That's one area. Also, our MLB data operations team, we have basically roles that are open at every single major league and minor league ballpark that are available. These will be coming up very soon. Normally within the next couple of weeks, we should see more of that set up on our website at mlb.com/careers. But we have these roles that are open where you can literally be there in a major league ballpark or in a minor league ballpark in different cities, all minor league or major league cities, where you're involved there collecting information that's used for a lot of our MLB app and everything on that end, but different ways that you can get experience as well. And those are many ways you can juggle that with maybe other things that you may be doing as well. But it's a great way just to get some significant experience in general. So there's a bunch of different roles that are all part of that. Also, if somebody is truly very knowledgeable about the game, maybe you want to become an official scorer. That's one thing too. That's another opportunity that's also generated from that. And most major league cities, especially, we have typically 2 to 3 people that are involved in doing that in every major league market. So just one other way that you can look at. Also, our right now, if you go on our site, we do have a role that's open in our minor league operations and development department. That is a seasonal role where you can get experience. We're as a unit involved in overseeing the minor leagues. So there's an opportunity where somebody can come in, but basically at the beginning of the new year, have this role during the course of the year where you're involved in helping with some of the programming, some of the aspects of overseeing and oversight of the minor leagues. So that's just another opportunity that's out there. And also just stay very connected with me. I try to do a good job of sharing a lot of different opportunities that are out there, making sure I can make things as easy for you as possible. Just collecting job information, all the different postings that are available from the different clubs. I share that out with a number of people. So I try to make sure I can do that to help. Because one, I want to make sure everybody's informed about opportunities first and foremost, so you know where to go. Here, I'm trying to make it easy for you in the course of the process. And also, as you're thinking about, you're putting together your resume, and we'll get into that in a second, and also your cover letter. This is your chance to sell yourself and provide some insight about who you are. Let me ask the two Joshes here. Let me ask them as far as here we are. We're talking, resume. You're trying to find a way to separate yourself. What things in your mind, in your opinion, really can make somebody stand out on paper looking at the resume?
Fantastic. I'll take this one first, and then Josh can fill in any holes that I have left. So the big thing to note is, again, we're going to have 200 people applying and only one person getting the job. So what sorts of things can you do to help your odds? Number one, sort of know what role you're applying for, and get as much knowledge on the team beforehand. So basically, every team in the league, not basically, every team in the league uses SQL. And basically, everybody who works in a front office position needs to know SQL at least a little bit. If you do not have SQL on your resume as I know SQL, that is going to be a very difficult path. Basically, whatever job, if it's inside a front office. For analysis, the vast majority of the teams are still using R as their workhorse for analysis. And that's whether you're on sports science, player development, or straight R&D. However, a handful of teams are now moving over to Python. If you'd asked me this 5 years ago, I would have just said, just worry about R, that's what everyone is using. But a handful of teams are now moving over to Python. So I would recommend having on your resume your Python skills and your R skills. And in your resume, if you do not have a link to your GitHub page to show your coding chops and show projects that you've worked on, you are just going to be behind the handful of candidates that are generally getting those positions. So the vast majority of the people that I personally have hired in the past couple of years have all had a GitHub repository that I've been able to go to and look at their code. And again, these positions are, somewhat for analysts, but somewhat for other things as well. And then what other ways can you really stand out? Baseball is a bilingual sport. If you are bilingual, that is incredibly important. About a quarter to 30% of the players and a similar number of coaches are Spanish speaking first. If you have that ability, then that is fantastic, and you should definitely highlight that. If you don't have that ability and you are an American person, adding that ability can be a real separator. You can say, look, I didn't know Spanish growing up, but now I've learned Spanish. That will show to teams that you care and that you may have, that ability to go the extra mile that they're sort of looking for. That literally matters. And then, the other thing that I'll note is try to be visible but not loud. If you are trying to sell yourself over Instagram or X, and always being the one who's like putting out hot takes, or this front office screwed this up or something like that, that is generally not going to work very well. And you can go look at some of the people that are doing that. some of whom who've had jobs before in the league, and they're generally not getting another position. So that's what I have for how you can stand out, and Josh will layer on from that.
Yeah, it's pretty fun because I get to kind of talk maybe about the stuff to not do, I think, with the resume, which is I think also important to kind of factor in there. So I think one thing that's kind of important, I will start with the positive. I think one thing to do is to focus on the idea that your resume is, something that's you're putting your best foot forward, but also like there might not be a lot of time for this person to look at it. And so what you need to do is you need to get some of the skills that Josh mentioned. You need to get relevant work experience and you need to get that to the top. A lot of people go in there and they like to put stuff in chronological order, or they'll kind of start with like education and other things and like a statement up at the top. And those can be nice and helpful, but understanding that like a lot of times people are kind of really kind of flying through these applications and looking. And so you're only getting maybe what might amount to a momentary glance. So it's really important to make sure that, if you're applying for a certain role, think about the things that are most important for that role and get those things to the top. Think about experiences, or I say experience, but just like, work experience or opportunities that you've had or projects that you've done even, and sit there and get those to the top. I think another thing to kind of factor in there is the idea of like, I see a lot of young faces here. Like, you don't have to have 35,000 things on your resume. You do not have to have five different whatever. I love that some of you guys were lifeguards in high school. You do not need to waste space on your resume letting me know that you crushed it in your high school whatever classes. Like that's cool. I get it. It's helpful and you really want to kind of have a big whatever page to put out there. But again, people are looking real at these really quickly, so you want to make sure that they're not cluttered and it's very easy for them to find the relevant information that they have. Another thing that you can do, I again don't necessarily want you to feel like it's just trying to play an algorithm or something, but understand the language that's in the posting for the job that's there, and then try and understand if that's language that you have on your resume as well too. Some teams, some companies, some wherever you work, like they'll use kind of just these like quick scanners to kind of do like a pattern matching to go, but other times even if it's just a person looking through them, which is what we do here at the Twins, even if it's just looking through it, just making sure that that language is there, it's much easier for that person to kind of say, I see the fit here, I understand what's going on, versus kind of using maybe different terminology or different words. So just understanding that you're going to have to go in and learn the vernacular of the place that you're trying to get into, and even just using that in the posting that you see and using it as part of your resume, that's a really big part too. The last thing I had there is just to play devil's advocate for Josh. Absolutely. If you know Spanish, you should absolutely throw it onto your resume. But if you don't know Spanish, do not throw it onto your resume and then all of a sudden find yourself in an interview where somebody starts speaking to you and you're not ready for it. And now you've just crushed any positive vibes that you had. So I think Kalk is absolutely correct. Like that is something that's, if it's there, you should highlight it and make sure it's your skill. But if it's there and it's on there and you even put intermediate, be ready to demonstrate that live in the interview, because it's not just something that a lot of teams put for granted. Like we need to know that you have that skill or not, because it is important for the environment that you're going to be in.
You've hit on some great points and great ideas here. One thing I do want to bring up, this is basically the kiss of death. So you're going to send your resume in, you're sending it in through the application. You've got a cover letter maybe attached with it. You got that as well. And then here you are trying to apply it to the Minnesota Twins, and it's going to go to Josh Ruffin, and you've got his name listed in there. And you just happen to have the Miami Marlins listed in somebody else's name in position on what you just sent in. Now, how is an executive supposed to react to that? That's the kiss of death. They've just scrapped. They thrown that application, just put it aside. You're gone. There's no chance. So just double check what you are doing before you send it. Make sure that you completely have the correct information, because you may have your sort of template that you're using, and then fill in the gaps based upon the name. Just be very careful that you are being very detailed in that process.
And if you're using AI to help you with your resume, which I actually would recommend that you do, there are some things about AI that do stand out. AI for instance, uses EM dashes everywhere. If there's a resume that has a whole bunch of EM dashes, it's like, oh, ChatGPT wrote this one. So use it as, an editor in particular, but just be aware that teams are now at least at the point of doing a first pass of, did AI write this for them?
Let's talk a little bit as far as like the interview process. I know the two Joshes, you both probably have many stories of things as far as interviews and talking to candidates. Some natural tips that we could maybe share for anyone that's going to now has made it to you've went through, they've screened your information. Now we're fully going into the actual true interview stage at this point. What tips and thoughts do you have can make somebody stand out in the actual interview as far as that process?
I'll start. I think the interview, I think the silliest one, since we've kind of thrown out some blunders people have done in the past, is to take it seriously. And what I mean by that is just the idea of like, a lot of interviews are now done on Zoom, right? And there's been many a time where I've taken an interview and the person flips on the screen and they're lying on their couch, camera on their laptop on their stomach, chips falling onto the screen, and it's like, yeah, I mean, I get it. It's comfortable. It's not like in person, but like it is something where you're taking it seriously. So just think about that presentable side of it, of just choosing a nice little background, like a little self-plugging I'm doing right here or something like that. Just being able to kind of put yourself in something that seems professional, I think really helps. But I think getting into the interview itself, one of the biggest things is just like answer the questions as you see fit. I think there's obviously the ability of kind of like trying to play to a part, trying to give the answers that the other person wants. And quite frankly, again, like most of the times, you're not going to have all of the answers going in. So just giving truthful answers. I think honestly, a lot of people kind of get nervous, get tense. They start to sit there and talk a little bit faster, and they really kind of try and fill the space. And like quite honestly, like it's okay to take a couple seconds and like think about what the answer is. You're not expected to know everything off the bat. Like it is good to kind of show that you're like able to sit there and kind of pause and like, let's reflect on this and think, well, I could do this or I could do this. Like I actually don't know, but this is what I think the answer is. And so I think the interview is one of those where it really depends on kind of the setup. I know some teams will sit there and do a more traditional interview where it's just kind of asking you questions. Other teams might do an interview where they actually ask you to present on something. And so you'll come to it with maybe some materials to actually talk to them about. And I think whenever it's that second one, actually, one of the big things, and it applies to all interviews, but one of the big things is again, you are not trying to seem like the astrophysicist who just like stepped out of NASA home control and then sat there and said, I know everything on the beach. Like pick something that you know, pick something that you understand, pick something that you can actually talk about, and then use that language and talk about materials that you're familiar with comfortably, rather than trying to like make yourself seem like the most important person on the planet, just because we run into that where somebody comes in here, uses terminology that they think is super cool and is big and trendy in the space, and then as we dig a little bit deeper, they end up kind of getting exposed to not having the depth of knowledge that they're trying to put up there. And we really kind of gravitate more towards people who seem to like have a really good self-awareness of what their skills are at going into the interview. So those are kind of the first things that come off of my mind. But Josh has done plenty of interviews, so I'd love to hear what he has.
So I'm going to give you some specific questions that you should be thinking about that happen in a very large number of interviews. In particular, if you happen to be on the other side of the screen, for me, what questions am I always asking? One of the most common questions is if some data that you've discovered goes against the wishes or the thoughts that a coach has, how do you present that data to them, and how do you handle that disagreement? Teams want you to tread lightly, but also not be walked over. So that is sort of where they're aiming for that question. You can't just say, oh, well, the coach is right, so I'm going to let all these, whatever thing that you found, go to waste. But you also can't say, I'm going to yell at the coach and say, I'm right. So there needs to be a balance, and that's what teams are shooting for with that question. And that question is the most asked question in my experience in these interviews. Some other questions that you should think about, something like, tell me a time you've had incomplete or conflicting data and still needed to make a recommendation. What do you do? That is a question that you don't get in school, because when you are in school, you are never given a project, at least in my experience, where you have incomplete or conflicting data. But that happens in the real world all of the time. So this is a great question that separates the people who may be really book smart but may not have the real world experience. A question about, please design something that's related to this job and how you would go about designing that. Definitely give some thought about that. So think ahead about what projects they might ask you about that would fit in with that role, and then say, I'll be ready if they ask, how would I, set this specific thing up? And then a question on humility. Teams are looking for people that aren't going to say, I'm the best at everything. So they will often ask questions that look like, tell me a time you were wrong about something, and then how did you fix that? Or tell me something that you used to believe that you don't believe anymore. I have asked that question, and I've come up with to people. People have told me the answer. I've never changed my opinion on anything in my life in an interview. And if you do that, you're not going to get the job. So those types of questions, they are coming up again and again and again. You basically need to have answers to all those before you come in. But if there's a question, and there will be, that isn't on that list, you should also then take a second to breathe and say, okay, how am I going to answer this question? You don't need to answer instantaneously. Give yourself a minute to think and prep out where you're going before your mouth goes, before your brain goes. A couple of other little tidbits. Number one, if you have an idea who's going to be on the other end of the line, go visit their LinkedIn page, see what's on their LinkedIn page, and that may give you a clue about what they care about. I have given you a list of things that I care about that you might be able to find if you found my LinkedIn page, but that should be true for lots of other people. And then, and I can't believe I'm saying this, but I just got done with 2 of the last 5 interviews that I just got done with. 2 of the people swore in that interview. And I don't actually mind that, but one of the other people that was on the panel with me, that was a massive red flag for them. That is just getting into dangerous territory. And in my opinion, there's just absolutely no need for that. So I can't believe I'm saying this, but because this has happened now multiple times to me in the past week, I'm going to say that just to be clear.
Unless you're a major league manager, then you can do it. But beyond that, don't do it.
Get in the door first, then maybe you can see, get a sense of the vibe of the atmosphere, and okay, now I know I can curse here. A couple of things also that I just want to bring up for everybody as well is make sure you have questions that you've put together as you go through the interview. You can sort of, if it happens to be over Zoom, obviously you can have them all right there readily with you. If you're also in person for an interview, you can kind of see, and also just mentally see how certain questions you may have are being interviewed, being asked. But also make sure you do have the ability to ask a question. You're going to be given an opportunity, so make sure you have some ability to ask a question toward the end. Because one, it shows your curiosity. The last thing a club wants to have that person just said, no, I don't have any questions. Like they're gonna have some doubts. If anything, that's gonna give more of a red flag more than anything. So make sure you're thinking about that. Also, you do not need to dominate the entire conversation. Make sure you kind of go in and out, give them an opportunity to ask a question, and then you give a response. But don't go off on a tangent for 20 minutes. They don't want that. So just make sure you're concise, but also giving what they're asking for based upon the topic. And then let them have a chance to then ask another question, or they're going to expand upon it. So again, that's just a certain etiquette that you need to be aware of from an interview standpoint. I want to take one step back with related to before the interview. Many organizations will have questionnaires that they want individuals to complete and fill out. Just to give an example, I had an individual that I've been helping to try to assist, and she told me, last week, she said, I've got like 5 questionnaires that I got to try to fill out in a matter of a short amount of time. And many organizations use these questionnaires as one, they want to get a sense of where you are, skill wise, also just kind of get a sense of kind of how you communicate. I want to ask you both, is some tips that you have as far as completing some of the various questionnaires that maybe even you may try to do, or just in general, how somebody should attack these when it comes to trying to be able to do these in a timely manner and also be as detailed as needed.
I'll go first unless Josh wants to go first, because I just completed this sort of myself. So teams are starting to understand that people are having less time to do these than previously. So I do believe that most teams are moving the goalposts in a little bit and putting sort of a time marker of 30 minutes. My last couple of job searches that I've performed, that's where we put that on, a clear time limit, and pay attention to that time limit before you start. The VidCruiter tool that we use will give you an idea of how many questions you have to answer and then how much time you should that you're going to have. So the last one that I had was 6 questions long, 30 minutes. And then that gives you an idea before you start. I should be sort of budgeting 5 minutes a question there. So that you don't want to get cut off or not answer a question, because that is very much a little bit of a kiss of death there. So when you get to those questions, pace yourself out like you would do talking. So try to think for a minute and then write out for 3 or 4 minutes, and then give one last minute as a read through. Make sure that there aren't any typos or things that you may not want to include on that, in sort of a 5-minute question and answer there.
Yeah, I think the some of the things that I have are kind of just the idea of like understanding that it's about staying like kind of on task. And it's absolutely one of those of like, sometimes people use it to try and just like really like, if you talk to a politician, they answer the question they want to answer, not the one they ask you. And so we see that sometimes in interviews as well, or I'm sorry, questionnaires as well too. Where somebody kind of sits there and takes the prompt and kind of runs with it. So I think one of the things is being aware, at least, of trying to be concise and direct to the point. That doesn't mean you have to do it in 2 sentences. It might take a full paragraph, it might take 2. But again, if you kind of understand the time that you have allotted out, as Josh pointed out, you can sit there and make sure that then you understand kind of the scope that you have to go in and answer some of these questions. I think also too, one of the comments that popped up earlier is a lot of these teams are asking a lot of the same questions, right? So I think there's something about having a little bit of a reflective period even after you submit them. Just knowing that, going through, thinking about it, thinking about the answers that you had, thinking about the thoughts that might have come to you just a little bit too late. And being able to kind of like ponder those will actually help you for the next time. And I know everybody here is like, but I want to get it right the first time. And I get that, I do. But at the same time, like realistically, you'll probably end up doing 2 or 3 or 4 of these at the very least. And so understanding kind of like, hey, here's a question that's before. I think the one that's always stood out to me was, I always loved it. I think it's out there. It's pretty well known, but it's like the idea of like, if baseball was like one long inning with 27 outs, versus what it is today, like would OPS or I'm sorry, would on base percentage or slugging matter more? And it's kind of one of those where it's like there might not even necessarily be a right answer. It's just one where we want to see how you think about the game. And so again, just kind of sitting there and saying like, go in, get an answer, write it down, proofread it, make sure you proofread it, and then sit there. And then even after you hit submit, go ahead and like think about it again, dwell on it, understand what you could add to it, and then that way you'll feel a little bit more prepared for next time, as you are doing a couple of these as you're going through. But I think the last thing that I would have on that, especially if it's a questionnaire that seems to have like, very subject specific questions and targets and subjects. One thing that you can do is if you have a contact at that team, or if you have, somebody who's part of the hiring process, is to reach out and ask for feedback on your answers, on kind of what you gave. I think the one thing here too is like sometimes it can be a bit of a black box where you just kind of send your things in and then you either get selected or you don't. And so it's really helpful to be able to kind of sit there and say like, hey, I submitted my things across. What did you think of my answers? Like, what could I have done better, or what were you looking for out of this? And getting that feedback is actually super helpful too. So again, we talk about the idea of making connections within the network and trying to do that. This is one way to kind of reach out to, excuse me, to somebody involved in the hiring process. And not only make that connection, but also get really good feedback that might help you the next time you have to go through the process again.
No, really good thoughts there as you're looking at that. A couple of things I just want to also bring up. Social media. Definitely that's something that many of you should have a LinkedIn page. You should have a LinkedIn page. For me personally, anyone that I talk to that I'm trying to maybe possibly assist, I always check what is their LinkedIn presence. Get a sense what they have there. I have their resume maybe in front of me, get a sense of, hey, how detailed are they with their LinkedIn page as well? So utilize that as much as you can as well. Because again, there are a lot of jobs that are always constantly being shared on LinkedIn. Take advantage of the opportunity what you see out there that's on there. Also related to that, shameless plug, but I've had a group on LinkedIn called the Baseball Industry Network that's been around since 2009. We have over 47,000 members. So if you go on LinkedIn, just look up Baseball Industry Network, you're going to see it in there. The one great thing about the actual group itself, you do have an ability, thanks to many of the groups on LinkedIn, you do have a chance to directly reach out to people. Not saying they're going to respond, but it's an opportunity to connect with people. Again, you want to make sure you're being courteous as you go through that process of reaching out to somebody, and also understanding, hey, they may or may not respond, depending, especially if they're not, connected to you potentially. But again, trying to make sure, hey, there's opportunities to meet with people, connect with individuals. Also, find others that are in the same sort of mindset of yourselves as trying to come into the industry as a whole. Looking at it from that standpoint. Also, just we want to, again, each of you you're trying to make your way and get yourself in the door. One thing related to that, we have a question in the chat it was basically, what is your general advice for those currently in school when it comes to applying for associate/internships, where the timeline would be either starting or ending during school year? I know, Josh, you kind of talked a little bit about this in the chat here. Any thoughts as people kind of navigating this process as a whole?
Yeah, so just real quick, if you haven't seen the chat, most teams have some summer jobs available, interns available, but teams need bodies that start in February, and that is just the reality. And if you haven't graduated yet and you can't start in February, you are not going to be able to apply to those right away. And that is just the situation of it. But there'll be some positions that'll be open during the summer. We have some of those positions open right now, but some of them will be required to start in February, and you'll just have to wait on those. And that sort of is what it is.
Yeah.
And Josh, if you want, or Tyrone, if you want to add to that, you certainly can.
I think one thing also to think about, say you're going to graduate in May, May or June. And I know sometimes you've been hopefully applying for stuff throughout the fall. Make sure you're doing that. But again, if say you don't have something right at that time, when now you get to your graduation period, start thinking about, okay, I know the next hiring cycle is going to be coming in the coming months. So what can I be doing now that can just continue my development and adding to my skill set? So me thinking about that, what can I be doing, put myself in a maybe even better position, and if you can just find a way just to continue, maybe you have another part-time job or some other way just to make ends meet for yourself financially, but also just putting yourself in a position thinking about, hey, my skill set, I'm going to continue to grow this using this time that I have before getting ready for the next cycle. Now you're putting yourself in an even better position to now make that next step. And also with that, make sure you have conversations with your parents about timing wise. Let them know, hey, you're going to probably still be in the house for maybe a little bit longer, maybe at that point. But then putting yourself in position to, hey, at the beginning of the next year, I'm going to be ready to leave. I'm going to have hopefully an opportunity that's going to allow me to get started. Let's see if there's a couple other questions here in the chat. Yeah, that were really. Let's see. Someone had also asked about if you have like a background, maybe you've done some things outside of maybe from a baseball operation standpoint. If you have some things there, how can you sort of combat that to some degree? So I'd be curious, individuals like Josh and Josh, if you can kind of fill in what you think might be a way for that person to sort of continue to try to sell themselves, understanding they may not right now have that team experience that you're probably ideally looking for at the moment.
I think it is tough. I think one thing that's like pretty, these internships are vaunted. So like there is a value of like, oh, you've worked with a team that will help to elevate you somewhat in the eyes. But I think a lot of it too is like one thing that didn't exist when I was around was kind of working with your college teams, actually. So if you are somebody who's still in school, sitting there and getting some experience and like even just being a part of the, some schools have big baseball analytics staff. Some schools, it might just be truly a pure, just like volunteer type setup. But kind of sitting there and being able to work with those teams in that setup, or maybe even if you're somebody who is really about it, like we've had interns who've come through here who've had experience with independent ball teams, and so maybe not the most glamorous part of baseball, but is absolutely baseball and is a great way to kind of learn about just interacting, especially if you're trying to work in a space that's like closely working with the players and the staff at the field. Now, of course, I answered the question about teams by saying go work for these teams, right? So if you don't have the actual team experience, I think there is something about like basically trying to build up a portfolio in some way, shape, or form that can help you stand out. And I think a lot of that is kind of as Josh did when he was starting off writing about baseball. The idea of just kind of like expressing your thoughts, kind of breaking down an argument. I think Fangraphs we all know and love, and it might not necessarily have to be the most analytical bend to the work that you're doing, but just being able to kind of show the thought process that you have towards a topic in baseball, a subject in baseball, maybe even a trend in baseball, and then being able to kind of like put pen to paper or have something saved, something tangible that allows you to kind of demonstrate those thoughts is super helpful. It doesn't mean you necessarily always get to send it across in terms of a application. And some of these, it's pretty much just your resume. There's not really a way to do it, but sometimes you can actually reach out to somebody who is a hiring manager to kind of say, here's some additional work that I've done that I think is a supplement to the resume that I have. So even if the experience on the resume isn't perfectly aligned to be like, I should clearly be in baseball, the fact that you've done these projects and that you've done them on your own time and that you've sat here and taken the time to kind of like curate them and demonstrate what you can do, that's one way that you can really kind of help yourself compete with people who maybe have been in the space before. Because not every job is just for trying to get somebody who has prior experience. There are some roles out there that are designed to kind of help people get in the front, get their foot in the door. And that's one way to kind of help yourself stand out on that front.
No, really, really good advice there on that end. And also, I know we're close to time here. One thing to really remember for each and every one of you is understand you just need one club to give you, one person to give you an opportunity. And you're going to have a lot of no's. It's going to happen. But if you just have one opportunity to get started, that's where hopefully you can now pave a path for yourself to get started. And once you're in the door, one thing to remember is if you can make sure you can just make a very positive impression, and maybe you don't get a chance to get a full-time opportunity right immediately, but hopefully if you've done good enough of a job, that individuals that you've worked with that organization can then make another call maybe to help you and assist you, and make sure you have a positive recommendation to kind of help you take that next step. But again, I know you're all trying to get that first opportunity in many cases, to put yourself on the map and get started with that. I also want to make you aware of here in Major League Baseball, we've been working closely with our clubs for a number of years and creating different opportunities. One of those is the Billy Bean Fellowship that we have. It's live on our careers page. I'll also put it in the chat here for you so you have it. This is a full-time, essentially a full-time post-grad opportunity for individuals to come into a baseball operations department, working closely with our clubs. You know, it's their volunteering to be a part of this program is a big thing. A number of our clubs throughout our entire history of similar programming has been really great. So it's just a way to come in and gives an opportunity, especially for someone who's really coming out of school, coming up, or even in the past couple of years, a great opportunity to get started. And again, find a way to pave a path for yourself. Again, all these opportunities are out there. We want to make sure that you can find your pathway and understand, if you can combine ways to show your love for the game, your passion for the game, along with the skills. And also, you got to remember, this is a people business, flat out. This is a people business. I know for me, the greatest thing about this industry is the people and having a chance to work with others who also are on the same page and wanting to build and be part of a winning environment. And and obviously everyone is competitive, each organization. I know the Joshes are both in agreement. Everybody is competing. Everybody's trying to win, competing for players and competing for talent to be in front offices in all different roles. So different ways for sure that you can find a path for yourself. But again, you have to continue to connect with people. That's a big part of it. Understand your skill set, but understand the value of you building a relation and building a connection with people along the way. And that's something we want you to make sure you've thought about that, as far as yourself, you personally, and how you can go about putting yourself in the best position possible to make your way into this industry, which is an amazing industry now. This is my 30th year in the game. Very, very blessed to just being able to do something I love to do, and also now have the ability to pay it forward and help others. That obviously many people along the way helped me in my own journey, and I know it's the same way with both Josh and Josh as well, for all the experiences they've each developed and had throughout the course of their time as well. Scott, I know we're right up here at the time as far as a window. Again, thank you for allowing us to be a part of this, share hopefully some really good nuggets for each and every one of you out there. I know many of you are going to be, with clubs here very shortly. And we know if we can help in any way, please reach out as much as we can try to assist you during the course of taking this next step for yourselves. Also, I'll put my email in the chat as well for anybody in case you want to reach out to me directly if you haven't already. Glad to see if I can assist in any way. But again, a lot of great opportunities are out there. Again, as it was mentioned earlier, teams are posting, they're putting it out there. This is your opportunity to showcase yourself, showcase your ability. Again, thank you both, Josh and Josh. You guys have been tremendous. We've been great partners in working with us here at Major League Baseball as well. And Scott, thank you again for giving us a chance to do this tonight. I'll turn it over to you for any closing remarks that you may have.
Well, thank you all so much, Josh and Josh. I mean, it's wonderful for you all to make some time for us tonight, and I'm sure all of our members appreciate it and really enjoyed your insight and candor. I think that's the great thing about what you guys were here today, just being honest. And Josh Kalk, just like, here are the questions that I'm going to ask. And sometimes I just don't think that people just are that candid about what they're going to hear, what they're going to do. And Josh are like literally like, here are things to put on your resume. Like here are the things that we're going to say, don't do that. So it's great. And baseball, the great thing about baseball is, and I'll echo what Tyrone said, it's a people industry, and all it takes is one person to take a shot on you. And then from there, you're your own best advocate in building your portfolio and moving up the ranks. So we're thrilled that you guys joined us. Thank you so much for making time out of your busy schedules. Tyrone, you keep asking people to add you on LinkedIn. Surely there's a limit to how many folks you can add, right? I mean, you got to be at the upper tier, right?
It's crazy. I apologize if you've reached out to me in the last several months and I have not accepted. I'm normally been very good at connecting with people, but I just realized a few months ago that they have a rule. Once you get to 30,000 connections, they will not
30,000.
allow you to add anybody unless you like get rid of people. And I'm so blown away by that. It's crazy. And
I
but
feel confident I'm never going to have that problem. 30,000.
it is nuts. I feel so bad. I've got to take time to go through now, and unfortunately, I've got to disconnect with some people in order to add new people now at this stage.
Oh man, that's hilarious. That's hilarious. Well,
Mhm.
unless the scores change, it's 1-1 after two, or are we still in the bottom of the second? But it was tied 1-1. So we've got a good baseball game going on. So thank you
Hey
all.
Scott, can I say one
Yeah,
last
go
thing real
ahead, Ty.
quick too? We didn't really get a chance to delve into it further, but the baseball winter meetings are going to
Yeah.
be
Oh
held
yeah.
in Orlando, Florida. So if you're looking for an opportunity, I encourage you to start looking now about making the travel arrangements for yourself to get down there.
Good
It
point.
doesn't cost anything outside of your own money to get there and having a place to stay. We have some really good events that we do. One of our events has already been in the selection process, which is called Take the Field. But we also will have we have networking events that we are in MLB are going to put together on December 8th and 9th. There, I definitely advise you to get there around December 7th, which is Sunday when everything really starts. So December 7th through the 10th is the actual dates timeframe of the winter meetings. But we have networking events on the 8th and the 9th, and those are great ways to get in front of individuals with various clubs. I will have if you stay connected with me, I will have information I'll be putting out publicly for people can register to put their name in so I can make sure we have a record of them to come out there for the winter meeting. So again, it's a great way to connect with people in general and navigate this process as far as making your way into a job opportunity so far.
The
Awesome.
only
Yeah,
thing
great
that I'll
point.
just quickly jump on to that is it used to be that a lot of those job openings were still open by the winter meetings. It has now gotten to the point where most of those jobs for the next year are full, which doesn't mean you shouldn't go to the winter meetings. And everything that Tyrone said is true, but just be aware that that likely will be for the next hiring cycle.
Yeah, the only thing I'll throw on there to finish that off is exactly that. Make sure you try and make it as efficient as whatever for you as possible. Reach out if you have connections within the game. Figure out who's going to be there. Set up times with them. Kind of do that beforehand because it can get super busy and the schedules can be full once you're down there. So reaching out to any connections that you have in the game and trying to find some time early is much easier than just trying to run into people or try and find them the day of while we're down there.
Fantastic. Fantastic. All right, everybody. Well, Josh, thank you so much. Tyrone, thank you as usual. And hopefully we see everybody at a SABR event soon. Take care, everybody. Thank you.
Take care, everybody.